Okay, so here are the answers for Ian Sharp's questions 21 to 30.
Okay, still in the Carboniferous. I think many of you will have seen these on the coast up in Northumberland or in the Yorkshire Dales or in Derbyshire. These are something called crinoids, which basically lived a bit like sea lilies or seagrass, so they sort of flowed around in the shallow water, and when they died they all broke up into these little tubular bits. So you've got a few of them just here, pick them up, the grass as well, so there they are all broken up, and we can see a nice bit here actually. This is from Derbyshire. You can see them all broken up. Most of the rock is actually made of those broken bits of crinoid. And I think that's a boulder. I think I picked that up on the coast in Yorkshire. So it was actually just a reworked pebble from the Carboniferous. Okay. Still in the lower Carboniferous. This is a really nice example of a coral, colonial coral. This comes from Matlock, a quarry down in southern Derbyshire, and actually you can see this one almost looks like it's fossilised, kind of flowing. You can see them sort of bending over at the top there. It's preserved in silica, and you can see the structure really clearly on some of these guys, particularly on this side. I think you can see all the little internal segments of those. That's a really nice example of a coral. You can see them down there as well, look. Okay. Okay, last example of the Carboniferous limestones. So these are boulders actually that I found on the coast in Yorkshire, and people find these quite commonly. They get reworked and eroded from further north in Northumberland in the Lake District by the glaciers actually, and they were transported down and deposited on the beaches in Yorkshire. So here we can see again really nice coral, and on top, if you look closely, you can see like star-shaped patterns on them. That's the corals coming up towards the light. That's the way they would have been growing up towards us. And these are similar, smaller varieties. You can see here lots of small little coral shapes, and you can see similar sort of star shapes in them. Been stained a bit red, so maybe some iron content in that rock. And that guy's same thing really. You see a nice sort of star shape in there. Seem to have a lot of rocks from Derbyshire. So here we can see some mineral rocks. Where are they? There they are. So these are, I'll use my hand. These are actually crystals which have grown in a fracture, and they're quartz, and the purplish colour is probably fluorite, where the crystal shape is looking a bit like quartz. So these are growing into a crack in the rock, hot fluids, and this one is definitely a bit of fluorite. So this is coming from Blue John Caverns in the Derbyshire area. It's often used to make nice ornaments, a nice purple colour. But they're quite radioactive actually, fluorite, so don't want to do too much with it. Okay, we're now in the middle of the Carboniferous, and we've lost the limestones and we're starting to see these sandstones. So these aren't fossils, but in here, all these patterns in here, we're actually seeing ripples. So these are evidence of ancient rivers. So a big river system came over the top of all of the nice coral reefs, a bit like the Mississippi going over the top of the Bahamas or something like that in the Caribbean. And we get these sandstones preserved with all of these ripples in it. And they're picked out quite nicely in this sort of reddish colorization. And it's the same sort of pattern you can see in that example through there. So large parts of the Pennines and northern UK are made of this sandstone, often called the millstone grit. So it was used to make millstones during the Victorian times. The end of the Carboniferous, before I mentioned the Permian, was when we had all the coal swamps, so in Wales and Scotland and England, and I asked Kira to pick up this piece of rock. It's really light, and you'll recognise that if you've got a coal fire. That's a big chunk of... So these are actually plant and fish scale fossils from Nova Scotia. So this is the impression of a bark, edge of a tree. These are bits of wood, essentially, impressions preserved in sandstone. And all these guys are bits of fish. All the diamond shapes are all the scales, fish scales. So that's from the late Carboniferous in Canada, east coast of Canada. These two samples are from the Permian, and as I said, the one on the right here, or is it? There it is actually from Oslo, from the Oslo Fjord. It's a volcanic rock, something called a Rom porphyry. But you find these all along the coast of eastern England, and they've been transported over there by glaciers in the last ice age. That's called an erratic boulder, which has come all the way from Norway to the east coast of the UK. But it's Permian in age. The other sample from the Permian is a sandstone, and this is actually from a borehole in the North Sea. So this is from about 2,000 metres underground, under the sea, and this is where a lot of our gas comes from. So it's a sandstone, and all the holes in these sandstones is full of gas. So when you're cooking at home on your gas, the gas originally came out from inside these Permian sandstones, and it's actually a desert sandstone called an Aeolian sandstone. Just means it's a sand dune, basically. This is the only sample that we had from the Triassic. The Triassic's actually quite a common rock in the UK. You find it in Cheshire and Liverpool. You find it around the Midlands. But this is something called a desert rose. This actually comes from Egypt, from Sinai, the Triassic in Sinai. And it's actually gypsum, I think, is making this up, gypsum and quartz. You get these very distinctive desert roses. They can find those present day, I think, in desert environments forming. So that's what that is, the only sample from the Triassic. And then we come into the lower Jurassic, and I think you all know what these are. These are all ammonites. You can see different states of preservation. The ones on here are all squashed flat in a shale. There's quite a few bivalves in there with them. And then these examples over on the left are preserved in 3D. This is a nice one. This is from Whitby, very common in Whitby. It's called Dactylorhynchus, is its fancy name. And sometimes, actually, in Victorian times, they used to carve a snake head onto the end of this and say that they were fossilised snakes. There's a long story behind that, but I won't go into that as to how it gets its the story behind it. This one's from a borehole in Lincolnshire, so it's been bored into the ground, and it actually picked up these ammonites as it went in. And this nice one here is preserved in pyrite, a sort of golden colour, and there's some nice small ones just there. And these ones at the top, sometimes you can find just bits of ammonites. These are quite common on the Yorkshire coast. You can see that's a really big bit of an ammonite. You can see where it would have continued round, so that's the only bit that was preserved. And then very commonly you find them preserved in these nodules. Again, this is from the Yorkshire coast. You can see a bit of an ammonite sticking out through there. So you pick it up, put your safety glasses on, whack it really hard with your geology hammer, open it up, and inside, hey presto, you've got some really nice ammonites preserved in there. You can see the chambers in the middle there of the ammonite, which used to be filled with air when it was floating around in the sea, going up and down a bit like a submarine.